I'm Peter Marsh, and welcome to another Aether In ATX video. Today's video is going to get a little weird, so please just strap in. I promise that it's going to be relevant to your life, and it's going to be helpful, but we just have to go through some weird things first. Alright, let's start off with some weird things. Comic books. I am wearing a Flash t-shirt. Now, the reason why I'm wearing a Flash t-shirt is because I have many superhero shirts, and I haven't worn this one in a while, but it also relates to today's video. A lot of people think that the original Flash was Barry Allen, who is probably the most popular Flash at this point. That's who Ezra Miller played in the movie. There's also the Flash TV show, and Barry Allen was the Flash in that. There's been a whole bunch of cartoons where Barry Allen is the Flash. But the original Flash was this guy named Jay Garrick, and he was around in the 1940s, maybe even before the 1940s, in what's considered the golden age of comics. He was on the Justice Society, and he fought in World War II with a bunch of superheroes, right? So a lot of people don't realize that Jay Garrick was the first Flash. Now, in the 1950s, the Flash that everyone's familiar with, Barry Allen, debuted. For Barry Allen, Jay Garrick was a comic book character. He read about Jay Garrick in comics, and that's where he got the name for the Flash, was reading about Jay Garrick. So there was this really famous issue of the Flash where everything changed. Barry Allen realized that with his powers, he could vibrate, and he could actually travel to another reality, another version of Earth. And over time, over decades of DC Comics, the superheroes have realized that there's multiple Earths. There's infinite Earths. And that they're all actually lined up in the same place. They're all in the same space, but they're different vibrations. And if you can change your vibration, you can travel from one Earth to another. So this was going on all the way back in the 1960s, I think. And the idea of like the multiverse and there being multiple Earths, that's something that has been a big part of DC Comics for decades and decades. And like all of their major events usually involve multiple Earths, right? Now, I bring this up because this kind of ties into manifesting. You know, the idea of multiple Earths, of there being multiple realities, that is a crazy concept, and it was delegated to science fiction and comic books for years. Then, with science and the idea of quantum mechanics and string theory and all that stuff, it started to become that it was like a possibility. That maybe somehow in science there is the idea that there are multiple realities. There's multiple versions of us. For me, I don't think of it like the way that it's portrayed in science fiction. I don't think of it like I can open up a portal and go see another version of me in another reality. I just don't think that's the way that it works. I do think, though, that with who you are, with your reality, there are there's infinite paths that you could pick. And by just choosing the path, you are creating a different reality. I think there's many different possibilities, but then the one that you choose is your reality. So I've already talked about some far out there stuff, and now I'm going to bring in my cynical side, my skeptical side. I think with my skeptical side, pretty much 98% of the time, that's the way I view things. It's kind of like, this is reality, this is what's in front of you, you know, science will back this up. That's reality, that's fact, right? That's how I think. And when I talk about manifesting, there are many, many manifesting teachers, many people that are famous for talking about manifestation, that they say stuff that just goes right in the face of my skepticism. Like, it's like, nope, I don't believe that, right? But it's funny because there are some manifesting teachers that say far out there wild stuff, but I still see the value in some of the lessons that they teach, in some of the concepts that they talk about. Probably the best example of this is Bashar. So you guys have heard me talk about Bashar before on this channel. Bashar is essentially an extraterrestrial from like a higher state of being that talks through a guy named Daryl Anka. Okay? Now, I know I've already turned you off and you're like, okay, this is ridiculous. I'm not saying that I personally believe that Bashar is extraterrestrial that is talking through this guy named Daryl Anka. Who I am, my own personal beliefs, I think that Darryl Anka is a man, and he assumes this Bashar personality. You think that you sit there and you think, okay, well, what would make him do this? Why would he do this? The really cynical side of me would be like, Darryl Anka realized the same lesson that L. Ron Hubbard realized before he created Scientology, that if you want to get rich, you should create a religion, right? I think he's probably made a lot of money off of his talks. Then the not so cynical side of me is like, okay, well, maybe Darryl Anka, who is a very smart man, has wanted to help people. And so he realized that like taking on this persona would be sensational and it would bring on a lot of people. He'd get a lot of followers and he could kind of share his message. Then there's yet another option, which is that maybe Darryl Anka truly believes that he is channeling a being named Bashar, and to him that's all real, that he's really channeling this being and he's speaking through him. Okay, whatever the case, whatever his motivation, I will give Darryl Anka some credit. When he talks as Bashar, he never stutters, he doesn't contradict himself, he doesn't like pause to fix what he's saying. He speaks like extremely well. He's very eloquent. He gets to the point and he never contradicts himself. So like what he's showing, it seems credible to me, even though he's talking about something that's so far out, right? And there's a woman, her name's Esther, I don't know her last name, but she channels a being called Abraham Hicks, and it's a very similar situation where like Abraham Hicks is like talking through her, right? I bring up Bashar and I bring up Abraham Hicks, and then there's just the regular people that aren't channeling any kind of being. They're just regular people talking about manifesting. And the thing is that there's connective tissue between all of them. All of these people that talk about manifestation, about changing your reality, like becoming your best self, there's stuff that like each one of them says. There's like consistent stuff. And so that's the stuff that I attach to. Regardless of my skepticism, that stuff, regardless of the source, I believe in. So my last thing, another far out there thing, is I'm going to talk about one of my very favorite book series. It's a series that has my favorite book of all time. I'm talking about the King Killer Chronicles. It's a fantasy book series written by Patrick Rothfuss. In that series, the main character's name is Kvothe, or Kvothe. It's like Kvothe, Kvothe, right? He's a ginger like me. And Kvothe is like the legendary hero of all time for this one fantasy world. Like he's just like the man. He's like the Luke Skywalker. He's even more than that, right? And there's so many stories about Kvothe, right? When you read the first book, which is The Name of the Wind, Kvothe is using a different name, and he's an innkeeper in this remote part of the world where no one can really find him. And he's given up his identity, he's retired from being an adventurer, and he's just trying to hide out from the world. This one guy that like chronicles histories, chronicles famous people, he finds him in this inn, and he takes, I believe, 3 days to interview him, and the whole story is told from Kvothe's perspective. Now, what I love about King Killer Chronicles, and this is just one of the things I love about it, is that the chronicler guy will ask him about specific stories, specific legends about his life, and then Kvothe will talk about the reality of what happened. You know, people think this amazing thing happened where I fought all these people, but it was really just like 3 guys, right? Or like people think that I was able to do this magical act, but I really just did this. So there's this sort of grounding, this sort of like real world quality to this crazy epic fantasy legend about this one guy. And I think that that's kind of what reality is like. When I think about different versions of reality and different interpretations of the story, like the clear thing, like the main thing you could think about is the Bible, right? And how there's stories of the Bible that apply to not just Christianity, but all different religions, right? Now, if we take that cynical eye or that skeptical eye and we look at the Bible, we can interpret it in different ways, right? Different ways that people have interpreted the Bible forever. One is that what's written in the Bible is the literal word of God, and everything that happened in the Bible literally happened. The world was made in 7 days. There are millions, if not billions, of people on this planet that believe that right now, right? Then there are people that believe that the Bible is just sort of like a metaphor and it's a bunch of fables, and that what happened didn't necessarily happen, Maybe there's some historical context, but the point is that it's like a metaphor for how you live your life in the modern day. Yet another interpretation of the Bible is that the men that wrote the Bible, in their time period, they didn't have an explanation for things that we can explain with science. And so when they would see things like a massive flood or some kind of like eclipse or something like that happening, they would attribute it to God, right? That like the mythology of the Bible is because they saw these things in reality, but they didn't have a scientific explanation for it, right? So there's all different ways you can look at the Bible. But the way I'm going to wrap this video up, talking about other realities, about Bashar, about the Bible, is that, here's my point, I'm finally getting to my point, 10 minutes in, is that it doesn't matter how you look at any of these things, right? Like, it doesn't matter if you look at the multiverse like, oh, I'm going to shift my vibration and I'm going to become a new person, I'm going to live in a new reality, which many manifesting teachers believe, right? It doesn't matter if you look at the Bible as like a literal thing where it's like, okay, this happened, the world was made in 7 days and all these miracles happen and there's angels, right? It doesn't matter if you're the chronicler guy, listen to Quoth's story in King Killer Chronicles and you're hearing the truth and all the legends aren't true. What matters is which thing you choose to believe. It goes back to the quote that I said in my second video, which is a personal quote that I came up with when I was like 20-something years old, where it is, never fear living in ignorance, because everyone lives in ignorance when there's no real truth. And I think that that's the case. Like, the thing that you believe in, based on your own personal life experience, what you've experienced in the 3D tangible world, that's what's valuable. And I think I personally have struggled for years and years of my life to be like, okay, well, I believe this, but this can't be true, right? And there's this like friction, this resistance where it's just like, no, forget it, man. Just like, believe the thing that works for you. Believe the reality. Like, if you're Barry Allen and you can vibrate to different realities, pick the reality that works best for you. There isn't going to be this moment of like, you know, revelation where you're like, oh my God, everything I knew was a lie. What'll happen if there's things that conflict with your main belief is that you will either change and take on a new belief, or your existing belief will just come up with rationalization for why that thing happened, right? So it's like, believe in what you want, but believe in it because it serves a purpose for you. It makes you happy, right? That's the key thing, and that's kind of the thing that's helped me out, and that's why I'm sharing it with this video. Because, like, I know that for me, I struggled for years and years and years to think like, well, what is real? Am I delusional? You know, does this person know reality? Do I not know reality? And it's just like, base reality on your own experience, but pick the reality that works best for you, where you feel the best about yourself. All right. I hope that made a lot of sense. If you like the comic book part of what I was talking about, I have another YouTube channel. It's called Comic Books Transformed. And you can go over there and me and my friend Brian talk about comics. I also have another channel called The Lastercast where me and my friend Danny talk about horror movies and streaming shows. So you can always check those channels out. You can like and subscribe to those videos. And then you can also like and subscribe to this channel as well. Guys, thank you so much for watching 13 minutes of this. You were awesome. I'd love to hear what you think about it in the comments. All right, until then, see you next time.